Hi everyone, this is Selena Kraus and welcome to another LDRS creative card video. In this video, we're gonna make a card using the Petal Pusher Cardinal Season stamp set. This time we're gonna use the flowers and the foliage, and those are layering stamps coming with coordinating dies. And I'm gonna use the Christmas paper pack. We're going to use few colors. We're going to use Kiss Me Red, Scarlet Rose, Olive Branch, and Evergreen, along with Raven for the sentiment. So let's get started. If you turn the stamp set over, there's an insert that shows you how to layer these stamps. So I'm starting with the flower and I'm stamping in Kiss Me Red, that's the lighter red, however the Scarlet Rose is the darker one. So we're going to layer the second layer, stamp the second layer with the darker ink. So here I'm doing 4, we're just going to use one. Once I'm using stamping positioner for mass producing. This makes mass producing easier. So usually when I use stamp positioner, I stamp a bunch of images at once. This time I'm just doing 4. So we're moving on. I lined up the second layer. I'm going to stamp with Scarlet Rose. So you can see here that layer, how it gives it more dimension, gives more dimension to the flower. So next we're gonna do with the foliage, and the first layer, actually it's a guide to stamp the rest of the layers on top of it to get a multicolored image. And because we have a coordinating die, so we make sure that everything is lined up properly when we die cut that image. So I stamp with the olive branch ink pad onto the scrap paper, a paper of my stamp positioner, and then I'm doing second generation stamping onto my paper. This way I'll make sure that I still can see that outline and it doesn't really interfere with the layers that we're adding on top. So I'm doing the second layer using the same olive branch ink pad, but I'm stamping directly and I'm stamping twice to have better coverage. So next we're going to line up the third layer and we're going to use Evergreen. So I'm just making sure here that everything is lined up properly. I picked up with the door of my stamp positioner. Again, I'm using my finger to rub that stamp because I'm using it for the first time. If there's any residue, to remove it so it stamps nice and crisp. So next we're layering those evergreen leaves or branches. So here I'll be using a little acetate piece to make sure that everything is lined up properly. Even though I'm using a stamping positioner, I want everything to be lined up perfectly. So that's why I was using the little acetate piece of, little piece of acetate. So next I'm stamping everything in evergreen. I'm repeating the process for all the images. And next we'll just stamp the little berries and I'm going to use the Scarlet Rose for those. So again here I'll use the piece of acetate and stamp on it first before I stamp directly onto my image because I don't want to mess it up at the very end. So that looks fine and I'm just gonna stamp everything. And now we're gonna do the die cutting. So we have 2 dies for the flower. One is the Petal Pusher that doesn't cut the outline, however it just cuts the petals. And that way you can lift up every other petal, kind of gives more dimension to the flower. And there is like a layering guide, so both layers, like the Petal Pusher one and the outline, you can line them up properly. So there's a little hole like that notch that you see there, so I used a pencil to mark that up. So when I go with the outline die, I'll use that notch to position the outline die. So position it there and I'll run it through my die cutting machine, and there we have the flower. So next here I'm popping those petals up to have more dimension. And I'm using a layer of the Christmas pattern paper. And now what I'm doing, I had a panel of white cardstock, 4¼ by 5½, and I put it onto a diagonal onto that panel, and I mark it on the back to have like kind of off diagonal layer there. Then I use my paper trimmer to cut it, making sure that we have a straight angle on the top right corner, so when we adhere it to our panel and our card base, everything lines up. Next, I'm stamping sentiment. I lined up, again I used the stamping positioner. I still have difficulties stamping, still recovering from the shoulder surgery. So I find the stamping positioner very useful at this case. So next I'm adhering everything onto the panel. And as well, the branch, the foliage has like the two of the leaves are popping up, like they're petal pusher type. So I'm adding some foam adhesive tape underneath to pop them up. I'm doing the same for the flower and every other one. I'm adding that foam adhesive so we have a more dimensional image. So I have everything adhered there. Just push that center. Next, I'm adding some foam mounting tape onto the back of that layer. Again, for more dimension. I'm just covering the entire panel. I'm just cutting little pieces here so I have nice coverage. So when this card goes through the mail, it doesn't get smooshed. I'm using the stamping positioner to position that in the corner there. I'll remove it and I'll just add adhesive on the back and add it to a top folding but white note card. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you soon in another video. Bye!